right, so it's a few weeks. It's a while later, and yeah, we're back trying to get this motor in that charger. So I actually did a little bit of reading research. This turns out it's a 1976 model 400, surely out of a car of some nature, given the oil pan that's on it. Assuming factory, smog era, low horsepower, yeah, fun. But the important thing is getting this junk on the road. So we're going to cram that motor in that car. And, well, as I left this thing so many years ago, transmission suspended by a rope with a 2x4 holding it up. And it worked okay. I mean, it's still mostly holding it up, but the torque converter has come dislodged because, well, the bungee cord that I had holding it in place rotted and broke because, well, it's been entirely too long. So I've got to reseat the torque converter, and once that's done, we should be able to see about drawing the headers up to where they won't foul the motor going in, and hopefully see about getting this whole mess put together. All right. So you're gonna have to turn it around, slide it in. Nope, under the car. Careful of the car. Put it under the car. Stop hitting the handle on everything. Slide it under the transmission. Yeah, let's try that. There's that, this needs to just go in.
I'm making it go in.
Not yet. The torque converter had dropped out of its place, and so got that re-indexed and all the way in. And, well, now I've got to mark it because Mopar decided to not put all 4 holes in exactly the same spot. So I've got another flex plate here. This is not the one off the motor. I am too lazy to take that one off. So grab another one I had laying around. I'm going to find out the exact orientation of the flex plate, and we're going to mark the converter, mark this flex plate. I'm going to carry this over to the engine and mate it up with that one and mark the one on the engine so I can get the orientation right when this goes together. I'm not laying into the car getting angry trying to turn the motor over multiple times and putting bolts in and out and all that, because that would just make me frustrated and angry. So we're going to go ahead and get this on the converter and get it lined up. All right, I've got my flex plate. It's oriented with the dish the appropriate way as it would be on the motor, and a couple of torque converter bolts handy, and we can start trying to see which way this is actually going to fit the converter. So that one there, did we get it right off the bat? We might have. Let's see. That's 2. Hey, it looks like I got it right the first time. Sweet. I'm just gonna verify that these all thread in the way they're supposed to. Might have some boogered threads to deal with, but it does line up. It lines up all the way around. So I've got a little bit of paint. I'm gonna squirt that one. We'll do the same on the engine side. All right, we're here at the back of the motor,
And we just got to clock this appropriately. So I'm looking at the gap between the holes here, and that looks about right. So let's see if that matches up. Good there, 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 and on the bottom. So that's the way it goes. That's our silver ear. So we're gonna go ahead and mark this one right there. Ta-da, done.
I got these, I think they're Dynatech Mighty Mounts or something like that years ago. Are they any good? I don't know. We're about to find out, but that's what's going on.
So this engine is new to me in the sense that I did not pull it out. That being said, it's been in my possession for a number of years in storage, basically as I got it. I noticed the dipstick laying up here, and I also noticed, well, the end of the dipstick tube does not look normal, which prompted a precursory inspection of where it goes. And yeah. Fixed.
Hey, these cars isn't race cars. Like people pretend these are race cars. They're not.
They're new race cars.
Well, they look different.
Yeah, they do.
Huh?
Yes, they do.
They don't look like cool ones like that.
Oh, yeah, I agree. All right, of course the spark plugs are in the way, fouling the headers on the way down, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull them out. Get them out of the way. .400's in the car. I got the motor mount bolts kind of slid in place, not tightened. I got headers kind of put on, but not tightened because apparently the headers were kind of tweaked from, well, just the way things were stored for so many years, and so I had to kind of pull them into place. So headers are kind of tacked on, engine's kind of tacked in, bell housing bolts are kind of tacked on, torque converter's not attached to the flywheel or anything of that nature. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's not fully done. So I'm going to continue with the trend of not fully doing stuff. And, well, I'm going to pull the water pump housing off because this has the later passenger drop housing, and I need the driver's drop housing to go with the radiator that I have for this car. So, water pump housing is loose. It will be coming off. I have no intake manifold on this motor. I am going to pull the valley pan. I've got a new one sitting here ready to go on. Valley pan's coming off. We're gonna kind of take a peek what's going on in the valley, make sure nothing is screaming obvious bad, and try to get those gasket surfaces cleaned up, ready to receive a new one. And, well, I'm probably gonna run out of time, so that's my game plan for now. We'll see how far we get. Stay tuned. All right, so first order of business, I think I'm actually gonna get this spark plug, yeah, the spark plug thing. The distributor cap with wires is just in the way, so yeah, that's gotta go. And need to make room. and there's a vacuum line in there. Okay, yeah. Removed.
I'd thrown these rags over the intake ports to try to keep some of the debris out, and well, maybe they worked, maybe they didn't. But I obviously need to do a little bit of vacuuming first so I don't introduce more debris into the motor. ADD kicking in. I forgot I was going to do the water pump housing first. Yeah, let's do that instead. Because, you know, why do something I said I was going to do? That's just weird. Where's my faster tools? That one? That one. Got the valley pan off with little trouble, which was nice. And from what I can see, it looks pretty decent. Check it out. Nice and clean, no signs of major trauma, issues, damage, things of that nature. The cam looks pretty fair all the way down, as expected, or as would be expected from just a used cam. There's a little bit, a couple of pieces of RTV laying in there, but beyond that, nothing significant or cause for concern, which is a huge plus. Another piece of RTV hiding back here. Yummy. So yeah, with that looking the way it does, that's really good peace of mind that this motor's in decent shape, which I expected when I bought it, but it's been sitting a while too, so good to know it's fared well in storage. So now I gotta get intake, manifold, valley pan, seating surfaces all cleaned up and ready to receive new. All right, continuing where I left off on the Charger. We got the intake valley pan off. Everything looks good underneath. And so, yeah, we're just going to clean up the gasket surfaces and get ready to put the new intake on. So that being said, I did the right thing and made it more difficult to access by getting the car up on car ramps. I also need to get underneath the car, get all the rest of the bell housing bolts in, get the starter in, and start getting things tightened up, get the transmission fully connected, torque converter bolts in, things like that, get the dust cover on, and get the underside tidied up as well. So that's why it's actually up. All right, so taking you under the car with me. Now, noticing a few things. This sway bar bracket is pretty heavily bashed, and as a result, sway bar is into the control arm right there. So that's not so good. Furthermore, there's no bracket on this side. Totally missing. I mean, that bracket's there, but the rest of it's missing. And, well, you know, the steering box is leaking as evidenced by this mess. And, well, something else is probably leaking as evidenced by that. Not sure what exactly it is yet. Rest of the car, well, you know, greasy, oily, old. I know there's some patch plates, which are nothing more than a steel plate laid on the floorboard, and I suspected that right there, yeah, that guy, that'd be some rust. And, well, you know, that right there, yeah, that there's some more rust. So it's fairly minor, and I'm not going to worry about it right now, but it is worth noting. Obviously, I'd come under here with the intention of tightening a few things up and, you know, attaching some things, torque converter, whatnot. But I wanted to see about getting the engine mount bolts the rest of the way in, because, you know, one's not in there. It's hanging out, as you can sort of see right there. And, well, the driver's side I never managed to get in. And upon closer inspection, bringing the light over, discovered an issue. So, driver's side mount. You see a hole there, nice, yes. However, over here, I don't know if you can see that so good, but right up there, the engine mount that's attached to the engine actually hits the K-frame. And as such, the nut that the bolt threads into doesn't even line up with the hole. So once again, crappy aftermarket parts are interfering with progress. So now I actually have to remove this engine mount back out of the car, grind the side of the mount down in order to even be able to get the bolt in. So bringing you guys in from the top side here, that engine mount, as you can see right there, is hard up against the K-frame. And as such, the gap between the nut and here is too much. It's not allowing the mount to actually settle. Notice the gap. Not allowing the mount to actually settle all the way in to the K-frame. All right, check this out. This is what I was talking about on the engine mount. And for comparison's sake, I have a brand new, just regular Napa mount, as opposed to these ones, which were it wasn't a poly lock, but it was kind of something like that, where it has a mechanical lock in it, which really, in all honesty, it's kind of a bit of a marketing joke, because, well, they just take a regular type mount and drill it and put countersunk screws in it and sell it for a whole lot more money. Yeah. So what this is it's just a drilled countersunk screw, drilled all the way through the rubber, and it's actually threaded into the opposite plate, I believe, if I recall correctly from when I put it together. And in case anybody's wondering, you can still barely make out that it does say driver's side. So yes, I did put the right one on the right side, but what is happening is right here, you can see where there's no paint left because it was contacting the K-frame. So compared to the Napa mount, you could see the difference. Look how little meat is up here. See how thin this is, and how, I mean, normally I'm a fan of beefier, stronger parts, but not when it fouls the frame of the car and doesn't allow you to use the part. So you can see very clearly, again, this is just a generic Napa mount, and yeah, I'm sure it's going to fail eventually. And this one is the modified version. I forget where exactly I got this one from. It's been too long. But yeah, and just for the other side, for comparison's sake, again, beef, it's got plenty of meat, which normally is great, except when it hits. This side wasn't the problem. It's out in space. So this is fine. The problem is this side. So what's happening is it's hitting right here. It's a little dark in there for you guys. Where's my light? Hold on. All right, got my light in there now so you can see. And yeah, it's just fouling this portion of the K-frame. And you could kind of get an idea of how close that hole is to there. Granted, my camera angle is not the best, but it's about the best I can do. So yeah, it's just way too close. So we're gonna take and grind on this one we gotta grind this guy right here to better match this one. All right, again, we have our modified. Took this whole leg off to thin that up.
down here was out in space, so that didn't matter so much. But deburred the edges, cleaned it up, and there was an awful lot of flash on the inside, and you can still see some around this hole. Really heavy flash that I deburred around here and on the inside up here as well. But we're going to go ahead and throw this back in and resume as we were. This is frustrating. The problems with these mounts seem to not end. Having trouble, I decided to test fit it to put the bolt through the mount, make sure it fit. Well, it did as far as my modification was concerned, but I couldn't get the bolt to start. On closer inspection, I put the bolt in so you could actually see better what's going on. Yeah, that's the angle that the nut is welded at. And it's supposed to go through and pick up the hole on the opposite side of the mount. Yeah, that's not going to happen at that angle. And before you say, you know, well, the mount ear is bent or something, let me show you. Over here on the workbench, there's a square. There it's on the side of the mount, following that bend angle. Okay, look at that. Look at that. And no, it's not just sitting on the washer. See, we'll move the washer. Look. That's terrible. Furthermore, yeah, there is some bend that way. I'll give you that one. So, yeah, there you go. So, yeah, I'm going to bend this a little bit straighter, but that still won't fix the problem this way through the mount, which is what it really needs. After entirely too much time and frustration, engine mount bolts done. Engine mounts mounted. Engine mounted. It's been sitting in there for too long and just sitting. And, well, now we know why I fought the bolts so hard, because the mounts are crap. Don't buy those. What? Then you have interruptions, like one of the farm cats roaming into the shop, interrupting your videos. All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know, this might just be like an insert in the middle of an existing video, or it's an introduction for a new one. Either way, we started this project, as in, like, you know, pulled it out of mothballs 7 months ago now. It's gone by way too quick. And Mr. Toothless is now Mr. Bucky Beaver, because he's got gigantic beaver teeth in front.
You're not Bucky Beaver.
If you say so. And, well, I've been in here fiddling, trying to figure out all the fiddly bits on the car, because, well, there's a few fiddly bits that needed some figuring out. And one of which was pulleys and bracketry. So this was a 400 out of a 76 car. I don't know what, Cordoba, something of that nature. Anyway, 1976 car with factory air conditioning. So I found out. And I know I went through this learning curve years ago and promptly forgot everything in the years since. So I had to relearn it all. And there was a very specific reason that I bought new pulleys and brackets for this car, because, well, I needed them, because the AC stuff won't transfer over. It just, you can't use AC pulleys and not have an AC on the car. It doesn't work. You can't run the alternator. And, well, the power steering might work, but that's it. And I suppose you could, like, shim the alternator and play around with some things, and, Well, ultimately, the pulleys just, they didn't work. And it's just easier to get the right stuff and don't mess around with the fiddly bits. And just, if you have AC, get all the AC stuff. If you don't have AC, get all the non-AC stuff and save yourself the headaches and trouble that I just went through. So, I'll bring you in. I'll show you what I have established, what's figured out, and where we are at currently. All right, so what I have is the alternator bracket setup that was on the 440 that was in this car when I bought it. And, well, it is a non-AC alternator pulley setup with the alternator. And, well, the pulleys that I had that were on that 440 were AC pulleys, so I honestly don't know if they actually drove it that way or if they changed stuff around. I don't know what the story was. Regardless, I wound up putting my new crank pulley down on the bottom that is non-AC, mind you, and I did find in my pulley stash a non-AC big block water pump pulley because, well, that pulley exactly matched the other brand new water pump pulley that I also had. So somewhere along the way I've acquired this one, and honestly I'm not entirely sure where because, well, I've acquired a few things in the interim, and that box of pulleys actually came in somewhere along the way, and I think that was in it. Anyhow, I do have the power steering pump bracket for the Federal style power steering pump that was in the car. This is the setup that I had actually years ago blasted and painted this and had it sitting aside to go on the motor that I never ultimately got built. So I just bolted it on here, and, well, here we are. I have belts figured out, power steering and alternator, and, well, that's essentially where we're at. I have a fuel pump sitting right there that may or may not work, and that's fixing to go in behind, well, that fiddly mess. And yeah, this was kind of a frustrating mess because I alternated back and forth between alternator pulley brackets and bolts and shims and things of that nature because I had 440 stuff, and this being a low deck 400, there's some subtle differences. Obviously, the water pump stuff is all the same, but the deck height is, well, lower than a 440. And so, as such, they have this handy-dandy bracket right here that bolts to the head that allows you to use a 440, essentially, bracket setup with, well, a low deck motor. But the difference being this rear bushing is a 1/4 of an inch shorter than a 440 would be because, well, this would just bolt straight into a 440 head in what is actually this bolt location. It would just be up here because raised deck. So, yeah, I fabricated this because, well, I'm too cheap and didn't want to wait for a new one to show up. And, well, there that is. So I basically grabbed the worst of all the stuff that I had and bolted it on this motor to make it work. And, well, there's some nice new bolts thrown up against some really crusty, rusty parts because, well, it's what I had. And, well, there's a few other things to tie up still, like, you know, getting the headers bolted all the way on. And, well, obviously there's no intake still. I did crack the pan off and looked, and it's in the video probably before this point, so I'm being repetitious and I'm sorry. That is essentially where we're at. Dogs interrupting. It's my life. There's always dogs or animals interrupting. Sometimes chickens, roosters, geese, goats,
Dogs.
Horses, usually dogs. Yeah. Down here we have transmission cooler lines. And as you can see by the wonderful quality of what we have here, this one's been twisted off a time or two. And, well, it's in really poor shape. And this is like, you know, just hardware store special, I don't know, brake line / transmission line sticks that were poorly bent into place and don't fit. So in the box right here, courtesy of Mancini Racing, who is not sponsoring this video, mind you, I have brand new transmission cooler lines. Yes, they are in there. Now, why do I have brand new transmission cooler lines? Well, because I need them and I want to drive the car. It has an automatic in it right now and I want to drive the car. So it's getting new transmission cooler lines. Yeah. That being said, they will go away eventually along with the transmission because I have bigger and better plans down the road. But for now, it needs to drive. So transmission cooler lines. At this juncture, I think it is probably prudent to see about getting a fuel pump on this, and let's get some headers tightened up. I should probably get some spark plugs in it, and an intake manifold would be helpful. All that and more, probably not today, because I'm sure I'm going to run out of time, and my wife is working, so I'm going to have to go cook dinner soon. Yeah.
Pizza.
I am not cooking pizza. What is it with always the pizza? You pizza fiend.
What, beavers like pizza?
I think beavers like chopping down trees. I'm gonna replace my chainsaw with you.
I cannot chop down beaver trees.
I think you can. Yeah, just like that, exactly.
It's gonna take forever.
You just gotta chew faster.
I can't.
All right, so I'm working on header installation, and by that I mean just tightening them up because, well, frankly, they were already installed. They'd been installed since I bought the car. I just didn't have the motor installed. The headers have been there. So, yeah, anyway, engine, I left the studs in from the exhaust manifolds, and I made sure they were the short ones, not the, long. Anyway. So I left the studs in because big block Mopars, factory heads, the stud holes go into the water jackets. And, well, those of you that have installed headers with bolts know the problems associated with coolant leaks out of your header bolts. And, well, in my attempt to head off that problem early, I left factory studs in and figured I'd fight those instead of coolant leaks. Which I did. I got the headers on. They're in place. I just need to get them tightened up. Factory studs, fine thread. And, well, me being an aircraft guy and access being what it is around some of these pipes, I did not want to use the factory nuts because, well, they're just a standard 3/8 stud, and that's a 9/16 wrench. And, well, that's taking up a lot of room where there's not a lot of room to be taken up. So I went to my aircraft supply places, that being Aircraft Spruce, and no, they did not sponsor this. I'm just letting you know that you can get these aircraft fine thread small clearance nuts. They have what is essentially a built-in washer flange, and they are a 7/16 hex on a 3/8 stud. So they are very small. They are also a high-temperature lock nut. These are designed for jet engines and exhaust purposes. So they are a high-temperature lock nut, low clearance for these kind of tight applications, and they are fine thread. No, they do not come in coarse thread. And if you're interested, part number right there, MS 21042L6. Yeah, the 21042 is the style of nut, and the L designates the coating, and the 6 is the 3/8 size because that is 6/16. Yeah, I knew I'd get that right eventually. 6/16, which is 3/8. For those of you that don't want to do the math, yeah. Anyway, they are, as you can see, a small clearance nut with a large flanged surface. I have one kind of partially started on there, and you can kind of see how useful they are in such applications. You can actually get a wrench on them. Yeah. These can be had through some race shops, probably not under that part number. There'll just be some generic listing, but they also charge a markup for such things when you can just go to the aircraft sites and get the aircraft parts for cheaper, believe it or not.
So yes, there are aircraft parts now on my Charger because, well, I am me. Now, why am I using anti-seize? Because, well, we all know when you use anti-seize, you turn into the Tin Man. And, well, I know I'm going to be taking this back apart, and, well, I don't want to deal with stuck hardware because, well, as we all know, exhaust hardware is notoriously stuck. Often, you know, rust and things from heat and heat cycles and all that. So, yeah. I want to be able to get this apart later. That's why.
I forgot, on the Space Junk satellite, when I put the 440 in that, I had one of these Mancini, basic cheap chrome dipsticks that I put in, and, well, it didn't fit. So I was reminded why, and that you actually have to turn down this end of the dipstick where it goes into the block because it's many thousandths of an inch too big. So you have to sand down that portion to be able to get it into the motor. Had to do it again on this one. Check this out. While I was under there installing the dipstick in, there, I accidentally knocked this off the motor, not even realizing it was there. Now, let's see if we can get it close enough to read. It says TAM Eng Corp. Engine being short for engineering. I looked it up out of Tacoma, Washington. Apparently this was an engine rebuilding outfit that rebuilt everything, Mopars included. So this thing has been cracked open at least once, which is good to know. I can expect probably an overbore and, well, who knows what else. But it's been touched at least a time or two since 1976. All right, what I have hanging over here is a brand new brass copper radiator. Yeah, the expensive kind, and this was not cheap. However, I did buy it a number of years ago, shortly after I bought the car, when it was a whole lot cheaper than they are now. Probably about half the cost. So now I get to put it in. Oh, radiator time. Easy. All right, radiator installed, finally. And as a word of note, the little square nuts that are on the forward face of the radiator shroud, yeah, these guys, I went ahead and tapped those out with a tap earlier before I put the radiator in, just to make things easier because, well, they're kind of old and they have a tendency to rip out of the sheet metal if there's any kind of binding situation with the bolt as you put it in. And, well, over here, you can see the upper one has already been torn out. And no, that was not by me. It was that way already. And so I'm going to put a bolt and nut washer situation on that to hold the radiator in because, well, I don't have the nut to be able to weld it back in place. Anyhow, the radiator is in. I've also fished in my new transmission cooler lines, yeah, all the way back to the transmission, and they're even connected at the transmission and tight. Also, lower radiator hose is installed. Yeah. So we've got a few more things. Obviously, we still need a fan, get this kind of bolted on. And upper radiator hose, definitely needed. And, well, there's other things. The list is still pending. As a matter of fact, the list is right here. this is where we are. We have radiator done, trans lines, yeah. Don't forget the fluids and the filters. Yeah, tighten alternator belt once the fan, which is right there, goes on. And, well, yeah, I'd like to know the oil pressures, and temperature would be great. Wiring. Don't forget the vacuum hose, you know, so there's no vacuum leak. Make the electricals work, and that's not that important. Neither is that. That definitely important, and a place to put the battery would be a good idea.
Yeah, I'm just kind of bolting this car together by and large, but there's limits. I have my limits. And, well, over here on the battery tray, we've got some, you know, like bubblage under the paint occurring. You can't really see it there, but you can definitely see it here. Bubblage, peeling stuff. And, well, I don't want to bolt a battery tray on top of that and let that continue. Because, well, I do things in poor taste, but that's in poor taste, really. We're going to at least clean that up and, you know, maybe put a little spray stuff on that. Got the wire wheel and the die grinder. Under no circumstances should you ever put a wire wheel in a die grinder. So, yeah, I've got this Rust-Oleum rust reformer. I've used it before. It actually seems to work pretty decent. You know, you just kind of clean up the loose stuff and you just spray it over the top. I figure at the very least it's a good base layer, and, well, it's going to stop that nastiness from continuing to be nastiness and create more nastiness. So, hopefully we'll just, you know, push the pause button on the rust situation. I'll call that good enough for now. I mean, I want to drive it. Honestly, that's the whole point of doing all this. I want to drive it. For battery cables, I've got the infamous third battery cable off the 56 wagon. It's good enough. I'm just gonna bolt it on and hope for the best. It'll be fine. Really. Over here we have a brand new reproduction battery tray that I purchased, well, like everything else, years ago for the car. And, well, I cleaned and painted it, and once upon a time it looked really nice, but it's pretty dusty and dirty, and I'm going to put it on anyway, because done. Don't get it right, just get it running. David Freiberger, I want to thank you for that motto, because it is helping me get this project moving. And we got to put these clips in, probably from the bottom. All right, so I'm over here on the cluttered workbench, and I have what is essentially the engine electronic control center from an RV 440. And what this consists of is the ballast resistor, the electronic ignition module, and the voltage regulator for the alternator. And, well, I also have what's left of the harness from said RV, obviously chopped off. And, well, given that the Charger has no wiring harness in it currently, I intend to run it off of this for the immediate term, just to make sure that I can start it and it functions like it's supposed to. So I've got to unwrap this tangled, jumbled mess of wiring and sort out what is what. And, well, we'll plan on getting it in the car after I get it sorted out. We have motorhome wiring. So it's super sketch, you know, because that's important. And, well, it's, yeah, this. And for oil pressure gauge, I have an electronic video that's
scabbed onto the sensor down there that's in place of the factory sending unit. And well, it's just held together basically with alligator clip jumper wires and hopes and dreams. So that is essentially my wiring. I do have ignition wire set up from the terminal on the firewall, my starter terminal. That is alligator clipped through a really long set of jumper leads to the ignition box. And I do have a on-off switch wired in here so I can shut the ignition off without disconnecting things, which it's a nice feature, honestly, I must admit. So yeah, that's essentially my ignition. I do have an on-off switch, which is fantastic. I'm able to read oil pressures and, you know, the important things like that. And when it gets hot, I'll smell it, so I'll know that it's getting hot. So I have the nose gauge for temperature. Crank it over and see if I can get oil pressure up first.
Nice. Car starts. Oh, it's not.
Step in the right direction. It's moving the needle. Do I have fuel? Not yet.
Pour a little in there.
Yeah.
Actually starting to pull up. All I've got in the squirter.
This is just breaking the list one.
You know, would really, really help if I connected the coil wire.
I was just gonna say, are you sure the spark plugs are doing their job?
Well, no. Not quite there yet. No sparky spark.
So, got the motor to light, which was awesome. Then we noticed it puking fluid underneath, which wasn't awesome. Yeah, it's all the fresh oil coming out. And, yeah, it's just, yeah, all over. And, well, I think I just figured out why. When I took old oil filter off, you'll notice, maybe, there's no seal in that oil filter, which means the seal remained stuck up there on the oil filter housing, which means when I put the new oil filter on, it stacked seals and it just spat oil out everywhere. So now I got to back that off and cut the seal off and then put that back on. Here we have our culprit. Looks like it was put on maybe with fresh paint. And, well, it was adhered to the oil pump. That needs to go back on there. And then that whole thing goes in the garbage. Hopefully, this will solve the oil leak. So, while I was fiddling with things and the cameras were shut off, I didn't forget. I had the ignition on. I had the number 8 spark plug wire off, and I had it attached to a random extra spark plug that I had laying around because I was checking for ignition, making sure I had some, because this thing wasn't really wanting to fire. And, well, come to find out, the ignition box was where it attached to the plate, and it just wasn't electrically attached well at all. Well, I mean, functionally it wasn't electrically grounded whatsoever due to rust. So I had taken the box off and cleaned up the surfaces and put it back on, and had that number 8 ignition wire off, connected to a spark plug laying on the intake to check for spark. And so I decided to turn the motor over and, check for spark like one does. And lo and behold, I had spark, because not only did I see the spark plug sparking, but this thing fired up for the first time on 7 cylinders. And it ran great on 7. I mean, as good as can be expected on 7. It wasn't great on 7, but it was a solid 7. Let's put it that way. And I quickly shut it down and, turned the cameras back on so you could actually see it come to life for what was actually not the first time. It was the second time. And I didn't say it was the first time. I wasn't lying. But we let it fire up on 8 for the first time, which you saw. But it was only on 7 when I first heard it light off, which was actually kind of surprising because I was not expecting it to actually start. But it did. So, yeah, that was kind of cool and rather amusing at the same time. It works, it works, it works.
Rattling all the dirt off of it.
Mm-hmm.
And smoking.
Be a little bit of oil on things and paint and stuff. But the Charger runs!
That's debatable.
Come on! It made noise! Don't kill my moment!
It doesn't even
This is my moment!
It doesn't even
Zip it! Zip it!
Mommy, it's running. There's nothing to talk about it.
For 3 seconds.
Yes, it runs!
Yes,
It is glorious! It has oil pressure!
Woohoo!
It doesn't rattle!
It is awesome. It is amazing.
Yep. Have you just seen words?
We have a charger
Woohoo!
that runs.
Yeah!
Victory!
It runs.
I may now go to sleep happy.
Have you seen ones?
It's ugly, it stinks, nothing works right, and it's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Now we just have to paint something on it.
It's definitely not ugly.
That's ugly.
If that's ugly, then everything we own is ugly.
Well, that is true. I'm not debating that.
Everything looks like that.
Now we can play with it.
Not quite.
Nope.
By playing with it, you mean fixing it more.
Mm-hmm.
You have a charger that has made noise for the first time in 9 years.
Yep.
Good job. I'm glad you're very excited about it.
All right, the charger has made noise for the first time in 9 years. I had this thing running with the 440 in it that was in it barely shortly after I got it in 2015. It is now 2024, day after my birthday, and it has made noise once again, and I can hardly contain myself and my excitement for this moment because this has been a very long time coming, and it's the culmination of a lot of things and a lot of emotional things, and I don't have words for it right now. As far as the car is concerned, it's not drawing fuel very well. It's basically running off of what I put in the carburetor. The fuel pump's not fuel pumping. So I have another one I will install, and hopefully that will work. And we'll get the cooling system taken care of and see about getting this thing further along. But I think where we're at right here, right now, is going to wrap up our episode. And this is the highest of emotional highs I felt in a very long time, and I'm very, very grateful for this moment. There is going to be more on this car. Absolutely. It needs repairs done. It needs brakes. It needs tires. It needs a fuel system that's not a fuel jug sitting on the floor. I promise there will be a lot more of this car to come. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Tune in next time for more. Oh yes, real quick, because I always forget. Do the whole like and subscribe thing and, comment and tell me how much crap I'm doing wrong and things of that nature. We'll see you next time.